happens when a single radar misread .6 boats at the most defended ship in the Western Hemisphere. A near war, followed by a nationwide mobilization. Tonight, we break down the Ford's deck lights off posture, Venezuela's JL-10B radar confusion, and why Caracas used a no-shot encounter to rally 200,000 troops. The question isn't who blinked. It's how a crisis born from reflections on a radar screen became political fuel. Watch to learn how discipline at sea collides with sovereignty narratives on land, and what that means for the next encounter. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Deck lights off, radios trimmed to the minimum, and the Ford strike group sliding along an international waters track like a shadow. The carrier held center with 2 destroyers forward and a cruiser trailing, each sensor suite gated down under emissions control. Helicopters orbited low and wide, feeding the combat information centers with bearings and speed lines. The point was simple: operate legal, stay hard to target, and make anyone who came close work for every bit of data. That night, someone did. Onshore, JL-10B-based coastal radars stared across a humid sea lane. Their processors weren't built for mixed clutter. Wavetops, ducting, and multiple strong reflectors sitting inside each other's side lobes returned stacked and merged. Instead of 3 warships and a pair of rotating helo signatures, the scope hinted at one oversized contact dragging a smaller tail. That picture pushed an intercept. 6 fast boats left their pier with navigation lights dark and radios tight, crews leaning into the wind as they broke 30 knots within minutes. They spread on a shallow fan, 2 boats north, 2 center, 2 south, staying low and throwing spray. By 20 minutes out, the lead trio pushed up to 36 to 38 knots, noses high, trimming for speed. One coxswain edged inside 12 nautical miles and flicked on a fire control radar for a snapshot. The ping landed on USS Thomas Hudner. In the destroyer's CIC, an electronic support channel lit up, bearing steady, frequency matched to a known short-range set. Track numbers updated. IFF returns affirmed friendlies only, and the voice circuit to the bridge stayed calm. Hails went out on guard and maritime channels, short and clear, identity and intentions. No reply. Aegis arrays soaked up everything. The destroyers built a firm track file, correlated by the cruiser's aft picture, and the Seahawk's radar skin paint electronic warfare pod started to press. Not a full burn-through, but enough to thicken the noise floor and make the boat's sets hunt. Comms on the fast boat stuttered, then clipped. In the carrier's CDC, pre-planned responses unrolled by checklist. Maneuver options, non-kinetic steps, helicopter positioning. Boat teams staged but held rules of engagement sat on the edge. Hostile act, hostile intent, and positive identification. None fully met. One boat tried to break the board. Throttle wide, it hit 40, then 45 knots on a shallow cut across the formation's projected path. 5 seconds later, it threw a hard port turn, stern skidding, bow throwing a heavy sheet. The pilot likely lost his picture as the E.W. Hayes bent his range rings and the helm overcorrected. He came off step and settled to the mid-30s, angle bad, now outside his lead element and burning fuel for nothing. The destroyer kept him bracketed with optics and radar, but the guns stayed cold. The seam mattered. The strike group rode a track that threaded close to the line where territorial sea gives way to high seas. A minute of drift to the west, and warning arcs would overlap coastal batteries and short-range cruise missile envelopes. A minute of drift to the east, and the boats would be staring at a wall of steel with nowhere to go but closer. The solution was discipline. Course steady, speed steady, hail repeated. Helicopter lights flicked at range, and a clear ladder of responses held in reserve. The fire control lock ended as fast as it started. The Venezuelan boats bunched, then eased off, their headings wobbling as the interference deepened, and the Seahawk slid between them and the destroyer's beam. The Ford's air plan stayed conservative. No fast jets pointed, and the screen's weapons posture remained tight. No flares, no warning shots, No sudden turns to trap a boat into a collision claim. The message rode on behavior, not broadcast. They left the formation's bow and fell astern, speed back to the high 20s, still dark, still silent. The group never changed its track. The night stayed quiet at sea, but the noise moved ashore within hours. The guns stayed cold at sea, but within hours, the maps in Caracas lit up. What turns a no-shot encounter into a call-up measured in 6 figures? Narrative, timing, and leverage at home. The calendar mattered. The incident fell into a stretch of economic strain and local elections, when a national threat gives leaders a simple lever: turn confusion into cohesion. State channels replayed the night's contact as a daring intercept. The claim wasn't about shells and hits. It was about standing up to a visitor that didn't ask permission. Washington moved first in the information space. Officials pushed satellite images with ship tracks, timestamps, and coordinates stamped across open water. That package stressed one thing: legal navigation in high seas, not a covert incursion. The release cadence looked deliberate. Morning drop, follow-on maps, and a press availability that repeated the same coordinates 3 times. Caracas answered by narrowing the frame. The carrier strike group, in its words, crept inside a strategic orbit that pressed on national dignity. One set of slides showed latitude and longitude and maritime law. The other showed a supercarrier off the north coast with patrol boats in the same frame. Each side spoke to a different audience, and both claimed the safer story. 2 truths collided. The law of the sea gives a wide lane for transit and operations beyond the territorial limit. Sovereignty under pressure says a line on a chart means little when a giant flight deck looms near crowded coasts and busy refineries. International listeners read the law. Domestic listeners felt the proximity. That split set the stage for what came next. Mobilization moved in layers. Ground brigades near coastal cities stood up overnight rotations. Checkpoints popped on access roads to key ports, and reserve battalions reported to regimental depots. Air Force alert cells shifted to quick-turn launch cycles at bases near the Caribbean Arc, with ready crews sitting strapped in at shelters. Offshore patrol vessels refueled and slid to outer markers, while riverine units loaded along the Orinoco and its feeder channels, a sign the interior routes would be guarded as tightly as the coast missile units that usually sit quiet rolled onto pre-surveyed pads, launchers masked by camo nets, radars in warm standby, crews rehearsing the drill that matters: raise, align, lock, and wait. Why escalate without a shot? Maduro had incentives that stacked. A sharp signal to friendly capitals shows resolve and invites diplomatic backing. A visible deterrent to neighbors cools opportunism during a tense window. At home, uniforms on the street and drills on television turn a muddled radar night into a rally point. The cost is lower than combat. The payoff is political, and the risk is measured, as long as nobody squeezes a trigger. The media battle lines reflected that logic. Pentagon briefings spoke in clauses: authorities, coordinates, compliance. State outlets pushed a single image: small boats squaring up to a floating city, and stamped it with claims of successful deterrence. One side offered a legal case. The other offered a moment of defiance the public could replay. Commentators reached for history. Gulf of Tonkin sits on the shelf for a reason. Censor ambiguity, rushed interpretations, and the speed of politics. The parallel fits the risk inflation: how echoes and pressure can snowball. But the limits matter. Today's sensor fusion is tighter, data releases faster, and maritime law has more grooves for accountability. The same technology that confuses a coastal radar can produce a clean, shareable track log minutes later. Strategically, the episode nudged the region. Caribbean crisis management norms got a stress test. Neighbors weighed statements carefully, alliances took note, and militaries compared incident protocols against what nearly happened. Expect more hotlines, more pre-notification for exercises, and clearer thresholds for warning measures at sea. That's the quiet groundwork that keeps the next misread from becoming a launch order. In the end, the mobilization marked a narrative victory. not a battlefield one. A near miss became proof of resolve, packaged for domestic legitimacy. If restraint at sea is now the stated message, the real question is whether both capitals can hardwire that restraint before the next echo rolls across the scope.